was on cloud nine when we closed, and not because we closed, but really feeling like we'd given the thing to the community. There's a part where it goes from my hands to the cast, and then they gave as much of it to the audience as they could. And so it sort of felt like the contract had been completed.
I'm Rory Willats, and I directed the Furies at Wabash College.
It feels like this perfectly transitional thing where I'm using lots of the things that I have learned and directing it to something practical. So it is an academic pursuit, and it is this large artistic pursuit.
Rory had expressed an interest in directing and then had taken upon the role of directing. For me, in particular, he had worked in a collaborative ensemble building a show. He had assistant directed me, he had associate directed me, at varying points he had co-directed with me. We all as a department realized that perhaps the best way to showcase Rory's work and his quite dedicated progression as a director was to offer him a main stage production.
It's really been neat to see him grow and sort of some of his wild and crazy creative ideas become a little bit more solid, and then for him to be able to put that on stage and actually figure out how all of these moving parts of tech and actors and all of that comes together and how it is his and what he may need to let go of has been really neat.
It was a kind of give and take in a way, so like we would suggest things and he'd take those ideas and then he'd suggest things. So there was a lot of like, if we didn't like an idea that he was making, or like if we wanted input on something, he'd be open to hearing our ideas about it.
There are times when I planned for something to go one way, and then something in the room was saying, this is an opportunity that is better. Conceptual work is for pre-rehearsal. And when I'm in rehearsal, you've got to go with your gut. As soon as your planning is superseding valuable impulses in the room, then you are asserting that your brain and your conception of the show is in some way more right or more valid than the actors. That's an uphill battle.
He had us do this thing called viewpoints. We pretended the stage was a grid and we all walked around on this grid, and we'd like jump at the same time, and he'd tell us like to all breathe at the same time, and that ended up helping the Furies group a lot because we were like such a big ensemble, and breathing and lifting was such a big part of what we did. It's interesting that these like crazy things translate so well into what we end up doing on stage.
He also has a lot of musical vocabulary, and he had even said a few times in the rehearsal process that he was going to talk like a musician. You know, he talked about pacing and rhythm. He had us doing exercises that involved collaboration with breath, which is a very musical thing.
Every time you have great actors in a rehearsal space and you get to like make a thing, then you are playing. I mean, there are parts of rehearsal when you feel like a kid in a sandbox. And that's a blast, yeah.
Rory is a remarkably generous artist. He's a remarkably generous collaborator. He is unbelievably earnest in the ways that he approaches text, in the ways that he works with actors, and at the same time, he is so focused in such a meaningful way in the work that he's doing. When you have that combination of somebody who is willing to put their heart on the line, is willing to explore and examine a text or a new process with everything they have and do it in such an open and kind way, it's a rare combination. I keep telling everybody he's going to be paying all of our bills in like 10 years.
He just came in like the first day knowing just like so much about, I guess, like the history, like the dramaturgy and everything that went into this show. If you had like any question about the characters or the names or anything about the script or even the two plays that came before, he knew like everything about it.
He's very analytical while also having, you know, the obvious creative streak. With the Furies, he was able to pull together themes and then turn them into a look, you know, the style that he wanted, and also to deal with things about it that bothered him and have bothered a lot of other people who are familiar with the humanities, to find a way to bring those problems to light and say, we're not just going to bury them.
So it was just interesting to see how much time and effort he spent researching like videos and movement things that he had for the show. He was telling me about all the hours he spent just watching video and watching other takes on the show and spending time on, I don't know, like Pinterest and things like that, just generating ideas and ideas.
This opportunity has been this insane one to be like, how do I get to practice these tools early so that as I build a professional life, I'm going at it with a bunch of tools, with a toolkit, rather than making those mistakes on the way, and then finding myself in 10 years in the position that I've just been in, and then that being the first time to really stretch myself independently as an artist.
He has directed a show now, so that is so much more applicable than a kid who just was an assistant director or a student who was, you know, just studying under a director. He has that hands-on experience that, I mean, you can't like get pretty much anywhere else.
There were people who came to the show from outside the Wabash community that had no idea that it was a student that had directed it. They had no idea it was me. Which also meant, right, that I had an audience watching it without sort of tempering that critiques. It went from workshop production to this is an unabashed main stage.
I think it says that anything is possible here. You can come and direct your own show, or you can, you know, direct a one act. It just shows that like we're always innovating, we're always thinking of new ideas, that we can make students more involved, we can make their work more practical for the world.
I don't think that any other kind of education would have led to this kind of show or my ability to understand the show in this way. This is at least a small demonstration of the power of liberal arts at large.